Welcome. Well, you're at home with Jim and Joy, and you are an important part of our EWTN family. And we are delighted that you have welcomed us into your home. We certainly know what a privilege it is to be there. Well, we would love to hear from you, so send us an email with any question or comment to jimandjoy@ewtn.com. And today, our guest again is Michael Heinlein. He is an award-winning Catholic writer and editor. And one of his most recent books is Black Catholics on the Road to Sainthood. And this book is available at ewtnrc.com. And we were sharing with Michael in our show, and it was really, I loved, on Monday's show, we kind of put a comment out there. And one of our callers who had called in, whose name was Catherine, on Monday, she said, she was raised in a Catholic school by Catholic nuns, and the Catholic nuns told her to pray for the continent of Africa, because that's where the priests will be coming from. Well, you can look at the Church of America right now, and I'm sure that no matter where you are, north, south, east, or west, your diocese has African priests in it, right? And we here in Birmingham, Alabama, we too have African priests. And so we're so grateful. But what a prophetic word, because where were these holy men and women of God going to come from? And what their powerful preachers and their beautiful presence and their spirituality that they bring to the church in America is beautiful.
Well, Joy, we look forward to speaking further with Michael about these 6 Black Catholics on the road to sainthood. Venerable Pierre Toussaint, Venerable Henriette Delille, Venerable Augustus Tolton, Servant of God Mother Mary Lang, Servant of God Julia Greeley, and Servant of God Sister Thea Bowman. So we'll learn more about these, maybe Michael's favorite, and the lessons that we can learn from them, that we would walk in the way of holiness and mercy and grace and forgiveness and love and faith that they walked in. That we would pray for God's will for their lives, and we would ask their prayers as well. So plenty more to come. We'll be right back. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. We're at home with Jim and Joy, and today our guest is Michael Heinlein. He is an award-winning Catholic writer and editor of Our Sunday Visitors. You could go to their great website, simplycatholic.com. You can also see Michael's book, Black Catholics on the Road to Sainthood. Purchase that book. It's available at ewtnrc.com. And, you know, Michael, when we had you on yesterday, you know, you were sharing, and I loved your heart's response. Everything that was going on this past summer with all the protests and the riots and all the evil that was yet again raising its ugly head in our land. And you said, what's my part? What do I get to do? And so you decided to write a book and to think that here you are a writer, you brought your gifts and talents before the Lord, and you said, maybe this book can make a difference. And I so appreciate that, because if everybody had that response, instead of being angry and mad and frustrated, when all of that could make us all, no matter who we are, you said, I want to do healing. I want to do reconciliation. I want to help my brothers and sisters, all of us. And so in the writing of this book, was there any one of the 6 holy men and women of God that you resonated more to? And who inspired you the most, you think?
Well, Father Augustus Tolton certainly sticks out. You know, when we talked about his story previously and how the church was really not accepting of him in so many different ways, particularly his brother priests and bishops in the country, the seminaries that wouldn't accept him and so on. He saw the human side of the church, which is something that we don't necessarily wrap our minds around too easily at times. But I think in the wake of the clergy sex abuse crisis, we've had to wrap our minds around it in a different way. And so I think that Father Augustus Tolton can be a good model for us, that even in the midst of all this humanness around us in the church, we can still individually persevere in holiness. And, the other stuff matters, but at the end of the day, it's only what happens right here that matters.
Yeah.
And that's the story of Father Tolton.
Yeah. Well, what a gift. I don't know if it was you or maybe it was Deacon Sivers. I think he was speaking about Tolton's mother. So I don't know if you know about her, but I'm pretty sure that's who he was speaking about, and what she gave to him. Because to be that solid in yourself, at the time of around the Civil War or Reconstruction, all these feelings of love, and people who sacrificed their lives for those of color that they would be set free, and those who still hated. And then here's Tolton, black, and so everybody's dealing with the whole black reality and black issue, what's taking place in our nation, maybe some blame there, and then anti-Catholic bigotry, and there he is in religious garb, black and Catholic, at an incredible time where both of those things are under tremendous scrutiny and possibly violence. And you're saying it's what's happening in here. Okay, so God's doing something within him, and he has great faith, but also it takes an affirmation from somebody to say, you are somebody. You are a man. You are of worth, value, and dignity. You are not you are not a thing, the thingification, as Martin Luther King would say, of black people. You are somebody. You are a man. You're made in the image and likeness of God. Speak about that regarding him, but also about these other people of color who didn't have much affirmation, although there was always somebody there helping out, but a large part of society at that time was very negative. This whole idea of being able to be sustained by God and maybe a few other people that take the best of you and bring it out and kiss it and put it back inside of you.
I think with Tolton, as you mentioned, his mother, Martha, Perseverance was her middle name. And I think it was Tolton's middle name, too. He learned that from his mother. The story of him and his mother and his siblings escaping slavery from Missouri, crossing the Mississippi in this little boat with one oar, and she's got a baby in her arms, and she's paddling across while she's being shot at from Missouri and gets into Illinois. I mean, you think about that for a moment. Makes a great movie, right? And there is a movie underway on that. But that formed Tolton to be able to clear these hurdles that were placed in his way, one after one, just to say yes to God.
Yes.
And it's the same story with all of these individuals to one degree or another, as you mentioned. There was Pierre Toussaint, who was well-to-do in New York society at the time. He was a hairdresser, which meant that he went to the homes of the rich and famous, and it was a very lucrative position.
Yeah.
But he used his money to finance works of charity all throughout the city, even the building of the old St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, which he was once not allowed into, mistakenly, by the color of his skin. And he helped found that church, helped pay for that building.
Wow.
All these different stories of how they were able to experience this hatred, but they purified it by their holy hearts. They didn't return hatred for hatred.
Did he use any of this income to help set free slaves or to buy freedom for others?
Yes, he did. He bought freedom for several slaves, including his wife and his niece. He founded organizations to help people learn job skills. He founded a credit union. He founded soup kitchens and schools. Amazing what he did with this wealth. It was not for himself.
Well, Michael, in your book, you say that the way forward is the theme of holiness. How is that going to affect us today with the racism that is in the church today, and the racism that could be in our hearts today, and the racism that's in our country?
Well, our bishops in this country have been very clear. They had a recent pastoral letter on racism. They've been very clear that racism is a sin. The church has always been clear on that, but we need to hear that anew in every generation many times. because as many have described, in America, racism is our original sin, so to speak. And it's hard to kind of get out of our veins. We don't even realize it's there. One of my great heroes, who I just finished a biography of, a forthcoming book, Cardinal Francis George from Chicago, he wrote a pastoral letter on racism. And he called it that. He said, it's America's original sin. And we need to find a way to move beyond this because it infects even the church. And so I hope that this book can begin to, in even simple ways, direct us to the reality that racism is a sin and holiness is the only way to move forward from sin. We often think of it, it's this social problem, it's this cultural problem, which it is. There's no doubt about it. But there's no program, there's no plan, there's no policy that's going to fix it. Only the light of the gospel is going to fix it.
Right.
And that's holiness, letting the gospel take root in us.
So you're defining holiness as really taking root in us. Holiness has to do with consecration. Holiness has to do with canonization, doesn't it? To be a saint, holy saint, to be set apart in the sense of not separating yourself from other human beings, separating yourself from sin and that which divides us. So in that sense, you talk a lot about forging a way forward. Speak more about that. You've mentioned holiness. What are some of the other virtues or fruits of the Spirit or ways that you see that can help us as a nation, as a world, move forward together as a common people respecting one another's dignity, worth, and value?
Well, that's the thing, right? That we're made in the image and likeness of God. And how do we really practice that, even as a church and in society as well? How do we really practice that? It has to do with our daily living, how we treat people, how we speak to people. This is, we're going to overcome this sin through unity by uniting together as brothers and sisters in the Lord and in calling it for what it is, but also pointing out that we need to be men and women of faith, of hope, of charity, of prudence, of perseverance, of generosity. If we don't have those things defining who we are, if we aren't day after day seeking closer unity to be more and more like Christ, then these problems aren't going to go away.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Michael, in what ways do you hope that this book is going to be used?
Well, I can see it being used in a variety of ways because it's intentionally short. It's not a very long book, just about 100 pages. The chapters are short, 1,000 words for each biography, another 1,000 words for the accompanying reflections. So I hope that it can be used in parish study groups. I hope it can be used in schools. I hope it can be used in private prayer. I hope it can be given out to people. It's not that much money. So I hope that people could buy several and hand it out to family, friends, people you think that might need to be prodded or challenged a little bit in their views on race, particularly in their faith life. It's also meant to be a tool to help spread these causes so that more and more people will pray to them, so that God will act through this person, these various individuals' intercession, and that we'll have a miracle that will bring about eventual beatification of one of them, please God.
Amen. That's beautiful. I was thinking of just what's unique about the Black experience in America in particular. And I'm thinking of Julia Greeley, servant of God, and the angel of charity. I guess she was a Third Order Franciscan. One of the things that just struck me is that you put in there that she bore kind of one of the signs of slavery with a deformed or drooping eye because of a beating that she received. And wow, I mean, that's right there, before other people's faces, looking for Jesus, the suffering Jesus that was in her eye, in her face. She was more than a suffering person. She overcame, all these people overcame. But the whole reality, especially, seems to me, in the Black community, is the thing of suffering and radical identification with Jesus Christ who suffered. Jesus, the second Moses, that there'll be one coming who's like Moses. What are you talking about? Maybe a lot of people in the white community don't speak about Jesus as the second Moses, but Black people understood Moses. They understand him as the deliverer, understood him to break the bonds of slavery, to set us free, that Jesus was the second Moses, that they were suffering people, that Jesus is the one who was born in that manger, that he came, shouted from the mountains, as Thea Bowman said, that Jesus Christ is born. Speak to us about that aspect of our one faith that marks, these people, that marks the African-American community, Christ the liberator, Christ who suffers with us, Christ who gives us the ability in the midst of our suffering and pain and slavery to say that we are an alleluia people, as John Paul II said, and Jesus is our song. Speak about what they bring to us in that way.
Well, Julia Greeley is a perfect example, and you're right to bring her up in this, because not only did she have this beating, right, but she was a former slave, and she never really had the opportunities, right? She was impacted by the situation in which she was born and lived the early years of her life. She never really had the opportunity to move up in society or anything like that. In the estimation of the world, she would have been looked down upon. She didn't dress well. She lived in a little tiny apartment. She didn't eat much because she didn't have much. But whatever she had, she gave away. That's the self-emptying of Christ, who takes this suffering, who embraces the cross, and allows that suffering to transform not just them. They're already in the midst of that transformation, but they allow it to transform all of those around them. So they don't give that nastiness, that hatred, that bitterness back. They turn it into love. Yeah. And that's what Julia Greeley did so wonderfully. And she would travel around the streets of Denver with her little red wagon, delivering supplies or goods or food to anybody on the street, regardless of their color, regardless of their economic status. She would see some young white girls who were talking about needing to go to a school dance, and in the middle of the night she'd drop off a fancy dress that they could wear, because she knew that was an important part of their upbringing, maybe meet a future husband, and she wanted to play her little part in fostering that. Yes. She was an extraordinarily generous person. Her heart overflowed with the love of Christ, and she had a very strong devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Yes. With all of the atrocities, especially of slavery, and then segregation, systemic separation, and inequality, and so on, one of the things that I'm pondering is that even the people that were perpetrating these things had Christian formation, could get convicted, because we both had, many of us, a common faith, a common religion, Jesus, and we seem to be losing that in the United States of America today, and it seems to be attacked, that Christianity's the problem for everything, it seems, these days, especially Catholicism. So how important is it, because we can only have this common dialogue, and Jesus being between us, Jesus convicting us that this is our brother and our sister, and as that begins to wane, so does the opportunities to bring conviction and say there's someone who's between us. We may have different views about things or see one another differently, but we have to conform to Jesus Christ. How important at this time is the work of evangelization, declaration of the gospel, allowing the grace of God to land upon our declaration so that we have some common ground in Almighty God and a holy fear and reverence for God and seeing Christ in one another?
Well, I hope that telling the stories of these 6 individuals is an opportunity for evangelization, because it's meant to reshift, recatechize on the issue of race in some ways. When you think about it, racism is a denial that our brothers and sisters are made in the image and likeness of God, right? And so when we as Catholics talk about what are the greatest achievements of the human race or of a human person, it's a very different thing than what society would say. Our greatest accomplishment as Catholics is to become saints. And here we have these 6 individuals who we believe are saints. So if anyone's ever tempted to think that one of our brothers and sisters is less than us or not made in the image of likeness of God, I hope we as Catholics throughout the United States can hold up these 6 individuals and say, wrong. These are men and women who are the greatest among us. And that, I think, is an opportunity for evangelization in the face of this divisive issue which, a lot of people just don't want to address. A lot of people want to look past it or
Yes.
justify it or
Yeah.
deny it.
Yeah.
But
And that's insanity, because I love the
Yeah.
I love the definition of sanity that says sanity is being in touch with your past, looking at the realities of what's there, and just coming to grips with that as best you can. But you don't live there. So be in touch with your past. Don't live there. Live in the now, because this is the reality. This is where we are. How are we going to forge a way forward of an enlightened way of thinking and of love, and then set your face towards the future? So if we don't deal with this and reckon with this, it just continues to raise its ugly head. Although we're not living in that time, there are changes, there are progress. We need to say that.
Yeah.
And how do we deal with what we have right now and set our faces towards the future? In closing, do you have any projects or any other books in mind? What are you thinking about?
Well, I just mentioned I just finished a 4-year project of a biography of Cardinal Francis George, the late Archbishop of Chicago. So that'll hopefully be coming out in a year or two. And then I just have 4 children's books that'll be coming out next month
Great.
from our Sunday Visitor, called Teeny Tiny Theology, which is meant to take various topics of theological study, break them down into about 250 words with great art, and help families learn more about the faith that way.
Michael, thank you so much for your gifts and your writing. You really hit on sublime matters and subjects, but you break it down so practical and put it right before you and say, hey, we've got to live this. We can live this. These people did this. We can move in this way in this age and in this time. So thank you so very much. It's Black Catholics on the Road to Sainthood, our Sunday Visitor. Go to EWTNRC.com. We strongly recommend the book. Plenty more to come. We'll be right back. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, you're at home with Jim and Joy, and we had a wonderful conversation with Michael. And it's a beautiful book, Black Catholics on the Road to Sainthood. And, there are so many role models out there in the world that the world would throw at us to say, this is the kind of woman you should be, this is the kind of man you should be. And maybe they're not the best, but the church has the best. And the church, and only the church, has the answer to all of the sins and the ills of our land, be it racism and prejudice and hate and anger, all those things that just so casually hang out inside of us, all those vices that we need to get rid of. That is your journey and my journey to holiness. And Mother Angelica would always tell us, you need to be a saint, and don't settle for anything less. Right? So you and I need to work at our salvation with fear and trembling and asking God any of our offenses, Lord, search me, know me, that I would be pure and holy, and Lord, conform me this day more and more into your likeness. Jesus, I love you. Jesus, I need you. And Jesus, I trust in you. And with God's help, we can make a difference.
And John reminded as well, Mother Angelica coming to the state of Alabama at the very beginning, asking bishops if she could come to the Southeast to do what? To pray for racial reconciliation. She and her sisters before the Blessed Sacrament, that she came here in a unique way to pray for healing, to pray for reconciliation, to pray for a way forward. And so much of that happened through Eucharistic adoration, through the Holy Eucharist. So many of these folks were daily communicants.
Yes.
At a time where I don't know if that was a regular thing, but they did. It was the power of Christ within them that gave them the love that they needed, as Thea Bowman said. Always love, never hate. It's always love, it's never hate. It's always agape, love, it's never hate. So God bless you. God bless all of your loved ones. You're an important part of this EWTN family. You're never alone. You're always at home with Jim and with Joy. Keep it on EWTN. Bye now.